The apartment was freezing. Not because the heater was broken, though it barely worked anyway. It was cold because Tasha Brooks could no longer get out of bed to turn it on. She lay tangled in thin blankets, her body shaking with fever so intense that sweat soaked through her worn nightgown despite the chill in the air. Her 8-year-old daughter, Amara, stood in the doorway of their tiny bedroom, watching her mother's chest rise and fall in shallow, labored breaths. "Mama," Amara whispered, her small voice breaking. "Mama, please wake up." Tasha's eyes fluttered but didn't open. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but only a weak moan escaped. She had been sick for 4 days now. It started as a cold, then a cough, and now she could barely breathe. But Tasha couldn't afford to see a doctor. She couldn't afford to miss work. She was a night cleaner at Pierce Industries, one of the largest tech companies in the city. Missing even one shift meant risking her job. Missing her job meant losing their apartment. Losing their apartment meant the streets. So Tasha had kept working, dragging herself through each shift, pushing a mop while her lungs burned and her head pounded. She'd come home at dawn, collapse into bed, and force herself up again each night. But last night she couldn't get up. She had passed out on the bathroom floor. Amara had tried to wake her, tried to give her water, but nothing worked. Now it was morning. The clock read 5:47 a.m. In 13 minutes, Tasha was supposed to be at Pierce Industries for her morning shift. She had switched to mornings this month to make more money, taking the early crew slot that paid an extra $2 per hour. Amara's hands trembled as she touched her mother's forehead. It was like touching fire. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she shook her mother's shoulder gently. "Mama, you have to go to work. They'll fire you. Mama, please." Tasha's eyes opened slightly, glassy and unfocused. "Baby," she croaked. "I can't. I'm sorry." "Then I'll go," Amara said suddenly. "What?" "I'll go to your work. I'll tell them you're sick. I'll tell them you'll come tomorrow." Amara's voice was desperate, determined. She couldn't let her mama lose her job. She couldn't let them lose everything. "No," Tasha breathed. "Too far. Dangerous." But Tasha's eyes were closing again. Her body went limp. Amara watched for a moment, making sure her mother was still breathing, then made a decision. She ran to the tiny kitchen and grabbed the piece of paper taped to the refrigerator. It had the address for Pierce Industries printed in her mother's careful handwriting. Amara had learned to read well in school. She could figure this out. She pulled on her red jacket, the one her mother had bought her for Christmas last year. It was getting small, but it was warm. She grabbed $4 from the jar on the counter, money meant for bread, and tucked it into her pocket. Then she looked at her mother one more time, whispered, "I'll be back soon," and left the apartment. 2 buses. That's what it took. Amara had ridden the bus with her mother before, so she knew how to pay and when to pull the cord. The early morning streets were dark and empty, but she kept her head down and her hands in her pockets. When the second bus dropped her off downtown, she stared up at the enormous glass building that seemed to touch the sky. Pierce Industries. The letters glowed in blue light across the top. The lobby was massive and cold, all marble floors and tall ceilings. A security guard sat at the desk, reading something on his phone. Amara walked up to him, her heart pounding. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I need to go upstairs." The guard looked down at her, surprised. "Hey there, little one. Where are your parents?" "My mama works here. She's sick. I need to tell her boss." The guard's expression softened. "What's your mama's name?" "Tasha Brooks. She cleans the offices." He checked his computer, then nodded. "Yeah, I see her on the list. But kid, I can't just let you wander around. Who's your mama's supervisor?" Amara pulled out the paper from her pocket and showed him. At the top, it said, "Pierce Industries Executive Floor, Suite 42. The guard frowned. "That's the CEO's office." "That's where Mama cleans," Amara said. After a moment of hesitation, the guard picked up his phone, made a call, then sighed. "All right. I'll take you up. But we're going straight to HR, not the executive floor." "Please," Amara said, her eyes filling with tears. "I just need to tell them she's sick. She's really, really sick." Something in her voice made the guard pause. He looked at her small frame, her too tight jacket, her worn shoes. He made a decision. "Fine. Come on." They took the elevator to the 42nd floor. The doors opened to a wide hallway with cream-colored walls and soft lighting. Everything smelled like lemon cleaner and coffee. The guard walked her to a large door at the end of the hall, knocked twice, then opened it. "Mr. Pierce? Sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation." Amara stepped into the office. It was the biggest room she'd ever seen. Tall windows overlooked the entire city. A huge desk sat in the center, covered in papers and a glowing computer screen. And behind the desk sat a man in a dark blue suit, looking up at them with sharp, intelligent eyes. Julian Pierce was 36 years old, built his company from nothing, and was known for being brilliant, demanding, and completely focused on his work. He hadn't expected to start his Tuesday morning with a child standing in his office holding a mop that someone had handed her in the hallway. "What is this?" Julian asked, standing up. He was tall, with dark hair and the kind of presence that made people nervous. But his voice wasn't angry, just confused. "Sir, this is Tasha Brooks' daughter," the guard explained. "She says her mother is sick and couldn't come to work." Julian's brow furrowed. "Tasha Brooks. She cleans your office, sir. Night shift, but she switched to mornings this month." Julian nodded slowly. He'd noticed someone had been cleaning his office earlier than usual lately. He'd even left a thank you note once for the thorough job. But he'd never met the person. He looked down at Amara, who was staring at him with wide, frightened eyes. "What's your name?" he asked gently, walking around his desk. "Amara. Amara. That's a pretty name." He crouched down to her level, making himself smaller, less intimidating. "Tell me about your mom." "She's really sick," Amara said, her voice cracking. "She has a bad fever and she can't get up. But she said she can't miss work or we'll lose our home. So I came instead. I can clean. I'll do a good job. Please don't fire her." Julian felt something twist in his chest. This child had traveled across the city alone before dawn to try to save her mother's job. "Where is your mom right now?" "At home. She's sleeping. She's so hot, Mr. Pierce. Like fire." "And there's no one else there with her? No family?" Amara shook her head. "Just me and Mama." Julian stood up and looked at the guard. "Thank you, Tom. I'll handle this." After Tom left, Julian turned back to Amara. "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to take me to your mom right now, and we're going to make sure she gets help. Okay? You won't fire her?" "I won't fire her," Julian said firmly. "I promise." Have you ever felt so desperate that you'd do anything to protect the people you love? What would you have done in Amara's place? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if this story is touching your heart already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. This family's journey is just beginning. Julian grabbed his coat and phone, then held out his hand to Amara. "Come on. My car is downstairs." They rode the elevator in silence. Amara kept looking up at him nervously as if expecting him to change his mind. When they reached the parking garage, Julian led her to a sleek black car. He opened the passenger door and helped her buckle in. "What's your address?" he asked as he started the engine. Amara told him, and Julian typed it into his GPS. 20 minutes across town. He glanced at her. "When did your mom start feeling sick?" 4 days ago. But she kept going to work. She said we need the money." "And she hasn't seen a doctor?" Amara shook her head. "We don't have insurance. Mama says doctors cost too much." Julian's jaw tightened. He'd built a billion-dollar company, but he'd forgotten that people who cleaned his office at night were struggling to afford basic health care. It wasn't something he'd thought about before. Now, sitting next to this scared little girl, it was all he could think about. They drove through the city as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Amara directed him to a neighborhood Julian had never been to, where buildings were old and crumbling, where trash lined the streets, and where safety bars covered every window. He parked in front of a rundown apartment complex and followed Amara up 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like mildew and old cooking grease. Amara unlocked the door to apartment 3C. The space inside was tiny. A living room with a worn couch and a small TV. A kitchenette with barely any counter space. One bedroom with the door half open. Everything was clean but old, held together by determination rather than quality. "Mama's in there," Amara said, pointing to the bedroom. Julian walked to the doorway and stopped. Tasha Brooks lay in bed, tangled in blankets, her beautiful brown skin flushed with fever. Even sick, even suffering, she was striking. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, her features delicate but strong. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s. And she was clearly very ill. "Mrs. Brooks," Julian said, walking closer. "Tasha?" Her eyes opened slightly. When she saw him, confusion crossed her face. "Who?" "I'm Julian Pierce. Your daughter came to my office this morning." Tasha's eyes widened. She tried to sit up, panic flooding her expression. "Amara went where?" "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Mr. Pierce. I'll come to work right now. I just need a minute to get dressed." She tried to swing her legs out of bed but immediately swayed. Julian caught her arm, steadying her. Stop. You're not going anywhere. You need a doctor. I can't afford a doctor, Tasha said, her voice barely a whisper. Please, I just need to get to work. Don't fire me. Please. I'm not firing you, Julian said firmly. And you're seeing a doctor right now. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Dr. Mitchell? It's Julian Pierce. I need you to make a house call immediately. He gave the address, then hung up. He'll be here in 15 minutes. Tasha stared at him, tears filling her eyes. I can't pay for a house call. You're not paying for anything, Julian said. I am. No, Tasha protested weakly. I can't let you do that. Julian looked at her seriously. Your daughter traveled across the city alone this morning because she was terrified of losing you and losing your home. She walked into my office and asked if she could clean it in your place. Do you understand what that means? It means you're both in crisis. And I'm not going to stand here and argue with you about money while you can barely breathe. You're going to accept help. For Amara, if not for yourself. Tasha looked past him to where Amara stood in the doorway, her little face pale with worry. Something broke inside her. She was so tired of being strong, so tired of pretending she could handle everything alone. She nodded slowly. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Mitchell arrived quickly, a kind older man with gray hair and gentle hands. He examined Tasha thoroughly while Julian waited in the living room with Amara. After 20 minutes, the doctor came out, his expression serious. She has severe pneumonia and is dangerously dehydrated, Dr. Mitchell said quietly. Another day or two without treatment and she would have needed hospitalization. I've given her 4 fluids and antibiotics. She'll need rest, medication, and proper nutrition. No work for at least a week, possibly 2. I'll make sure she has everything she needs, Julian said. Dr. Mitchell nodded and left. Julian returned to the bedroom. Tasha was lying back against the pillows and 4 in her arm, looking slightly more alert. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to repay you. You don't need to repay me, Julian said. Just focus on getting better. He stayed for another hour, making sure Tasha had water, that the apartment was warm, that Amara had something to eat. He ordered food delivery, left his personal cell phone number, and told them to call if they needed anything at all. Anything. Before he left, Amara hugged him tightly. Thank you for helping my mama. Julian looked down at her and felt something shift inside him. You're very brave, Amara. Your mom is lucky to have you. As he drove back to his office, Julian couldn't stop thinking about them. The tiny apartment. The fear in Tasha's eyes. The desperation that had sent a child across the city alone. He'd spent years building his company, focused on profits and growth and success. But what did any of it matter if the people working for him were suffering in silence? He made a decision. When Tasha recovered, things were going to change. For her, for Amara, for all his employees who were struggling. He didn't know exactly how yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let them fall through the cracks. 1 week later, Tasha sat on her couch, finally able to breathe without pain. The antibiotics had worked. Dr. Mitchell had visited twice more, checking on her progress, and refused to let her pay a single dollar. Mr. Pierce has taken care of everything, he'd said with a warm smile. Julian had called every day to check on them. He'd sent food delivery 3 times. He'd even sent Amara a box of books and art supplies to keep her busy while her mother recovered. Tasha didn't know what to make of it. Rich people didn't do things like this. Not in her experience. There had to be a reason, an angle, something he wanted in return. But when Julian called on the 8th day and asked if he could visit, his voice held only genuine concern. I'd like to discuss your return to work, he'd said. If you're feeling up to it. Now he sat across from her in her small living room, looking strangely out of place in his expensive dark blue suit among her second-hand furniture. Amara sat next to Tasha, eyeing him curiously. How are you feeling? Julian asked. Much better, Tasha said. Thank you again for everything you did. I know I've said it before, but I can never thank you enough. I'm glad you're okay. Julian leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I've been thinking a lot this week. About you, about Amara, about how my company operates. And I've realized something. I failed you. Tasha blinked in surprise. What? No, you haven't. You saved my life. I shouldn't have had to save your life, Julian said seriously. You should have had health insurance. You should have been able to see a doctor at the first sign of illness. You should have had sick leave. But my company didn't provide those things to contractors and cleaning staff. That's going to change. I'm restructuring our employment policies. But that's not why I'm here today. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase and set it on the coffee table. I have a proposal for you. I'd like to offer you a new position. Not cleaning. Something different. Tasha's heart raced. Mr. Pierce, I appreciate the thought, but I don't have any special skills. I didn't finish college. I've been cleaning offices for 8 years. You have organizational skills, Julian countered. You're reliable, hardworking, and from what I've seen, you're intelligent and capable. I need an assistant coordinator for my office. Someone to manage schedules, handle correspondence, organize meetings. The position comes with full health benefits, a salary of $60,000 a year, and regular business hours so you can be home with Amara in the evenings. Tasha felt dizzy. $60,000 a year? She currently made $22,000. That's more than double what I make now. It's what the position pays, Julian said simply. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm offering you a job that I believe you can do well. The question is, will you take it? Tasha looked at Amara, whose eyes were wide with hope. She looked back at Julian, searching his face for any sign of pity or condescension. She found none. Only sincerity. Yes, she said finally. I'll take it. Thank you. Julian smiled, and Tasha realized it was the first time she'd seen him truly smile. It transformed his entire face, making him seem younger, more approachable. Good. There's one more thing. Your apartment. Tasha tensed. What about it? It's not safe. The building has code violations. I checked. The heating system is faulty, there's mold in the walls, and the fire escapes are blocked. I own a residential building about 10 minutes from my office. I'd like to offer you a 2-bedroom apartment there at a subsidized rate. $400 a month, utilities included. Tasha's current rent was $800 for this 1-bedroom disaster. Why would you do all this? Because I can, Julian said. And because it's the right thing to do. Your daughter traveled across the city alone to try to save your job. That kind of courage, that kind of love, deserves to be rewarded. Not with charity but with opportunity. This is opportunity, Tasha. Will you take it? Tasha felt tears sting her eyes. She'd been alone for so long, fighting so hard, barely surviving. And now this man, this billionaire she'd never even met before last week, was offering her a lifeline. Not just for her but for Amara. A chance at a real life. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll take it. Thank you. You don't have to keep thanking me, Julian said gently. Just show up on Monday ready to work. And Amara, I checked with the school district. There's an excellent elementary school 2 blocks from the new building. You'll start there next week. Amara threw her arms around Tasha, squealing with joy. Tasha held her daughter tight, looking at Julian over Amara's head. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Julian said. He stood to leave, but Amara ran over and hugged him too. Julian seemed surprised at first, then carefully hugged her back. When he left, Tasha watched from the window as he got into his car. Something had shifted between them, something she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. A connection. She shook her head, dismissing the thought. Julian Pierce was a billionaire. She was a former cleaning woman. Whatever she felt was just gratitude mixed with relief. Nothing more. It couldn't be anything more. But as she helped Amara pack their few belongings that night, preparing for their move to a new home, a new life, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her. Like she mattered. Like she was worth something. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something good. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Tasha stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, smoothing down the green dress she'd bought over the weekend. It was professional but not too formal, paired with simple black heels she'd found on sale. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like someone who belonged in an office. Someone successful. The new apartment was beautiful. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, clean walls painted cream, and windows that actually let in light. Amara had her own room for the first time in her life. They'd spent the weekend settling in, and Tasha still couldn't believe this was real. She arrived at Pierce Industries at 8:30, taking the elevator to the 42nd floor. Julian's executive assistant, Beverly, a kind woman in her 50s with short red hair, greeted her warmly. Welcome, Tasha. I'm so glad you're here. Let me show you your desk. Her desk was right outside Julian's office, in a space that overlooked the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Beverly spent the morning training her on the phone system, the scheduling software, and the filing protocols. Tasha absorbed everything quickly, taking careful notes. Julian arrived at 10, carrying a coffee and looking focused. He paused when he saw her. Tasha. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Pierce, she said professionally. Just Julian is fine, he said. How's the first day going? Really well, thank you. He nodded and disappeared into his office. Over the next few hours, Tasha handled phone calls, scheduled meetings, and organized files. She discovered she was good at this. Better than good. She had a natural ability to prioritize tasks and anticipate needs. At lunch, Julian emerged from his office. Tasha, do you have lunch plans? I was just going to eat at my desk. Join me in the conference room instead. I'd like to go over some things. They sat at the large table and Julian unpacked 2 salads he'd apparently ordered ahead. He handed one to her. I hope you like chicken Caesar. I do. Thank you. They ate and talked about work procedures, but the conversation naturally drifted to other topics. Julian asked about Amara's first day at her new school. Tasha shared that her daughter loved it and had already made a friend. Julian told her about growing up in a small town, working 3 jobs to put himself through college, building his company from nothing. I wasn't always rich, he said. I understand what it's like to struggle. That's why I want to change how my company treats employees. Everyone deserves dignity and opportunity. Tasha found herself relaxing around him. He wasn't cold or distant like she'd expected. He was thoughtful, curious, genuinely interested in her thoughts. When she made a suggestion about streamlining his meeting schedule, he listened carefully and implemented it immediately. As the weeks passed, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Tasha excelled at her job, and Julian increasingly relied on her judgment. He started eating lunch with her regularly, sometimes in the conference room, sometimes at the small cafe on the ground floor. He learned that she loved old movies, especially musicals. She learned that he was terrible at remembering birthdays but always sent thoughtful gifts when reminded. One Friday afternoon, Julian knocked on her desk. Do you have plans tonight? Just homework with Amara. Why? There's a new animated movie opening. I thought maybe you and Amara would like to go. My treat. Tasha hesitated. This felt like crossing a line from professional to personal. But before she could think of a polite way to decline, Julian added, I've been working too much lately. I could use a break and I figured it would be more fun with good company. Something in his voice, a hint of loneliness, made her say yes. That evening, the 3 of them sat in a movie theater, sharing popcorn and laughing at the animated characters on screen. Julian sat between them and at one point, Amara fell asleep against his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't disturb her, just carefully adjusted so she'd be more comfortable. Tasha watched him and felt something warm bloom in her chest. After the movie, Julian drove them home. Thank you for tonight, he said as he walked them to their door. I really enjoyed it. We did too, Tasha said. Amara adores you. And I adore her, Julian said simply. Then after a pause, and I really enjoy spending time with you, Tasha. You make work feel less like work. Tasha felt her heart skip. You do the same for me. They stood there for a moment, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Then Julian stepped back. Good night, Tasha. Good night, Julian. As she closed the door, Tasha leaned against it, her heart racing. This was dangerous. She was falling for him. She could feel it happening, had been feeling it for weeks now. The way he looked at her. The way he listened. The way he treated Amara with such genuine kindness. But he was her boss. He was a billionaire. And she was terrified of ruining the good thing they had. So she pushed the feelings down, locked them away, and promised herself she'd keep things professional. Even if it was getting harder every single day. Are you feeling the connection growing between them? Sometimes the best relationships start as friendships built on respect and kindness. If you're rooting for Tasha and Julian, make sure you're subscribed so you can see how their story unfolds. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. 3 months into her new position, Tasha had become indispensable. She knew Julian's schedule better than he did, anticipated problems before they arose, and had reorganized the entire filing system to be more efficient. The other executives had noticed. More than once, Beverly had pulled her aside to say, "You're the best thing that's happened to this office in years." But it was a Wednesday morning in late autumn when everything changed. Julian was in a crisis meeting with his senior team. Pierce Industries' biggest client, Hartman Medical Systems, was threatening to end their 5-year contract. Hartman CEO Gerald Chin felt that Pierce Industries had become too impersonal, too focused on technology and not enough on people. Tasha could hear the tension through the conference room door as she worked at her desk. Voices were raised, frustration evident. After 2 hours, the team emerged looking defeated. Julian's face was tight with stress. "We're losing Hartman," he said quietly as he passed her desk. "That's $30 million in annual revenue." Tasha's mind raced. She'd been reviewing the Hartman file just yesterday, preparing materials for Julian's quarterly report. She'd noticed something, a pattern in the complaints that had come through customer service. Without overthinking it, she stood and followed Julian into his office. "Can I say something?" she asked. Julian looked up, surprised. "Of course. I've been reviewing the Hartman communications. Every complaint mentions the same thing. They feel like they're dealing with automated systems instead of people. But that's not actually true. We have amazing account managers. The problem is they're hidden. Customers interact with chatbots and forms before ever reaching a real person." Julian leaned forward. "Go on. What if we created a personal concierge program? Assign each major client a dedicated account representative who they can call directly. Someone who knows their business, understands their needs, and treats them like a person instead of a number. It would require restructuring the customer service department, but it could work." Julian stared at her for a long moment. Then he grabbed his phone. "Beverly, get the senior team back in the conference room. Now." 20 minutes later, Tasha stood in front of the entire executive team, outlining her idea. She'd never done anything like this before. Her hands shook as she pointed to the slides she'd quickly put together on her laptop. But her voice was steady, her logic clear. "We're not losing Hartman because our technology isn't good enough," she explained. "We're losing them because they don't feel valued. If we implement this personal touch system, not just for Hartman but for all major clients, we change the entire customer experience. It's not about what we sell. It's about how we make them feel." When she finished, the room was silent. Then Julian started clapping. The rest of the team joined in. "That's brilliant," said Patricia Nguyen, the chief operations officer. "Why didn't we think of this before?" "Because we were too focused on efficiency metrics," Julian said. "Tasha, would you be willing to head up this initiative? Design the program, train the team, implement the system." Tasha's eyes widened. "I've never done anything like that before." "You just did," Julian said with a smile. "And you did it better than anyone here. What do you say?" Tasha thought of Amara, of their new life, of how far they'd come. She thought of the woman she used to be, invisible and struggling. And she thought of the woman she was becoming, confident and capable. "Yes," she said. "I'll do it." The meeting ended with energy and excitement. As the team filed out, Julian caught Tasha's arm gently. "That was incredible. You saved our biggest account and probably improved our entire business model. Do you understand what you just did?" "I just suggested an idea," Tasha said, feeling overwhelmed. "You saw what everyone else missed," Julian said. "You understood that business is about people, not just numbers. That's rare. That's valuable." He paused, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You're valuable." The way he said it, the way he looked at her, made it clear he wasn't just talking about work. Tasha felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," Julian said softly. Over the next few weeks, Tasha threw herself into the new project. She designed the concierge program, hired and trained new staff, and personally called Gerald Chin to explain the changes. When she finished her presentation, he was quiet for a moment, then said, "Miss Brooks, this is exactly what we needed. Please tell Mr. Pierce that Hartman is staying with Pierce Industries." When Tasha told Julian the news, he picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with relief and joy. When he set her down, they were standing close, his hands still on her waist, her hands on his shoulders. The laughter faded. They stared at each other, the air between them charged with electricity. "Tasha," Julian said quietly. But before he could say more, Beverly knocked on the door. "Julian, your 2 o'clock is here." The moment broke. Julian stepped back, clearing his throat. "Right. Thank you, Beverly." Tasha returned to her desk, her heart pounding. Something had almost happened. Something that would have changed everything. And she still wasn't sure if that would have been wonderful or terrible. Maybe both. It was a Tuesday morning in early December when Vanessa Richardson walked into Pierce Industries like she owned the place. Tasha was reviewing budget reports when the elevator doors opened and a woman stepped out, wearing a white designer coat and carrying a Louis Vuitton bag. She was beautiful in that polished, expensive way, with long dark hair and perfect makeup. "Is Julian in?" the woman asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Mr. Pierce is in a meeting," Tasha said professionally. "Can I help you with something?" "I'll wait." The woman sat in one of the waiting chairs, crossing her legs elegantly. "I'm Vanessa Richardson, Julian's girlfriend." Tasha felt her stomach drop. "I wasn't aware Mr. Pierce had a girlfriend." "We've been on and off for years," Vanessa said with a dismissive wave. "I've been in Europe for the last 2 years but now I'm back." And Julian and I have some things to discuss. Before Tasha could respond, Julian's office door opened. He emerged with two investors, shaking their hands and thanking them for coming. When he turned and saw Vanessa, his expression shifted to surprise. "Vanessa, what are you doing here?" "Darling, is that any way to greet an old friend?" Vanessa stood and walked over, kissing his cheek. Julian took a step back, but Vanessa didn't seem to notice or care. "I'm back in town and thought we should catch up. Dinner tonight?" "I don't think that's a good idea," Julian said carefully. "Nonsense. We have so much to talk about." Vanessa looked at Tasha for the first time, really looked, and her smile turned cold. "Your assistant can surely manage your schedule to fit me in. Can't you, dear?" Tasha kept her expression neutral. "Mr. Pierce's evening is already booked." "Then unbook it," Vanessa said sweetly, but there was steel beneath the sugar. "Julian, I insist. For old time's sake." Julian glanced at Tasha and she saw the apology in his eyes. "Fine. One dinner. But that's all." "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. Vanessa blew him a kiss and left, her perfume lingering in the air. After she was gone, Julian walked over to Tasha's desk. "I'm sorry about that." "You don't need to apologize," Tasha said, keeping her voice level. "Your personal life is your own business. Vanessa and I dated 2 years ago. It ended badly. We're not together. It's really none of my concern." Julian studied her face. "Why does it feel like you're upset?" "I'm not upset," Tasha lied. "I'm just busy." She turned back to her computer, effectively dismissing him. Julian stood there for a moment longer, then returned to his office. Tasha took a deep breath, forcing down the jealousy that threatened to overwhelm her. She had no right to be jealous. Julian wasn't hers. They were boss and employee. Friends at best. Whatever feelings she had were one-sided and inappropriate. But for the rest of the day she couldn't shake the image of Vanessa kissing Julian's cheek, calling him darling, acting like she belonged there. Over the next week, Vanessa became a regular presence at the office. She dropped by with coffee, leave little gifts on Julian's desk, laugh loudly at his jokes during meetings she invited herself to. She was charming to everyone except Tasha, toward whom she was subtly dismissive. "Be a dear and fetch me some water," Vanessa would say, not asking but telling. "Please make copies of these for Julian," she'd request, handing over personal documents as if Tasha were her secretary too. Tasha handled it all with grace and professionalism, but inside she was breaking. Because the worst part was watching Julian. He was polite to Vanessa but distant. He never encouraged her behavior, but he also didn't firmly shut it down. And Tasha didn't know if that meant he was being kind or if he was actually considering getting back together with her. One evening Tasha was working late, finishing a report. Julian had left at 6, saying he had plans. At 7:30 she gathered her things to leave. As she walked past the large windows overlooking the street, she saw Julian through the window of the upscale restaurant across the way. He was sitting at a table with Vanessa, who was leaning forward, touching his hand, smiling in that practiced way of hers. Tasha's heart shattered. She left the building quickly, taking the bus home instead of waiting for Julian's driver, whom he'd insisted she use for late nights. When she got home, Amara was at their neighbor's apartment, doing homework. Tasha thanked Mrs. Chen, brought Amara home and tried to act normal. But that night, lying in bed, she finally let herself cry. She'd been stupid. So stupid. Falling for a man who was out of her league, who came from a different world, who had beautiful, sophisticated women like Vanessa in his life. Women who belonged. Tomorrow she decided she would put up walls. She'd be professional, friendly, but nothing more. She'd protect her heart before it got completely destroyed. Even if it was already too late. The next morning Tasha arrived at work with a new resolve. She greeted Julian with a polite smile but kept her distance. When he asked if she wanted to have lunch, she declined, saying she had too much work. When he lingered at her desk, trying to chat, she gave brief responses and returned to her tasks. Julian noticed immediately. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Tasha said. "Just focused on work." Over the next few days the distance between them grew. Tasha stopped laughing at his jokes, stopped sharing stories about Amara, stopped meeting his eyes for more than a second. She was cordial but cold. And it hurt more than she expected, cutting herself off from him. But it was necessary. Julian tried several times to ask what was wrong. Each time Tasha deflected. Finally he stopped trying. He became more formal with her, matching her energy. The easy warmth that had defined their relationship disappeared, replaced by professional courtesy and nothing more. Vanessa noticed the shift and seemed pleased. She increased her visits, bringing Julian lunch, suggesting they attend events together, constantly touching his arm or shoulder in that possessive way. And Tasha watched it all, feeling like a fool. One afternoon, Beverly pulled Tasha aside. "What happened between you and Julian?" "Nothing happened," Tasha said. "Something did. He's miserable. And you look like you're about to cry every time you look at him." "I can't talk about this," Tasha said quietly. "He cares about you," Beverly said gently. "I've worked with Julian for 10 years and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not even Vanessa when they were dating." "It doesn't matter," Tasha said. "They're getting back together." "Are they?" "Because from where I'm sitting, Julian looks like he's going through the motions with her. Like he's being polite but not interested." But Tasha had seen them at dinner. She'd seen Vanessa touching him, smiling at him, and she'd seen Julian not pulling away. That was enough. She couldn't put herself through this. She couldn't keep hoping for something that would never happen. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. It was a Friday evening and Tasha was gathering her things to leave when Vanessa arrived, dressed in a stunning red cocktail dress. "Is Julian ready?" she asked. "We have a gallery opening tonight." "He's finishing a call," Tasha said. Vanessa studied her nails, then said casually, "You know, it's sweet how much Julian helps you. But you shouldn't mistake kindness for anything more. Julian and I have history. We come from the same world. You're a nice girl but you're not really his type." The words were designed to hurt and they did. Tasha kept her expression neutral. "I'm aware of my place, Miss Richardson." "Good. I'd hate for you to get hurt when things between Julian and me become official again." Julian emerged from his office then looking tired. He saw Vanessa and sighed. "I thought we agreed to meet at the gallery." "I wanted to pick you up," Vanessa said, linking her arm through his. "Come on, we'll be late." As they walked to the elevator, Vanessa looked back at Tasha with a triumphant smile. The message was clear: he's mine. That night, Tasha cried herself to sleep for the second time in weeks. Amara had noticed something was wrong and had climbed into bed with her, holding her tight. "Did Mr. Pierce make you sad?" "No, baby," Tasha said, stroking her daughter's hair. "I made myself sad." The next week was torture. Tasha considered quitting but she couldn't afford to. This job paid for their apartment, for Amara's school, for their entire life. So she stayed and she suffered in silence. Julian seemed equally miserable. He snapped at people in meetings, worked late into the night, and barely spoke to anyone. The office atmosphere grew tense. And through it all, Vanessa continued her campaign, making it clear to everyone that she and Julian were a couple. But then, on a cold December morning, everything changed. Amara woke up with a fever. Tasha almost didn't call in sick. She couldn't afford to miss work, not when things were already so strained. But Amara's fever was high, and the school nurse had called saying Amara needed to be picked up immediately. Tasha called Beverly. "I'm so sorry but Amara is sick. I need to take the day off." "Of course," Beverly said. "Take care of her." But word got to Julian. And 15 minutes later, there was a knock on Tasha's apartment door. Tasha opened the door to find Julian standing in the hallway, still wearing his suit but looking disheveled, his tie loosened and his hair slightly messy. In his hands he held a bag from the pharmacy and another from a nearby restaurant. "What are you doing here?" Tasha asked, shocked. "Beverly told me Amara was sick," Julian said. "Can I come in?" Tasha stepped aside, too surprised to refuse. Julian set the bags on the kitchen counter. "I brought children's medicine, soup, and some comfort food." "How is she?" "She has a fever. The doctor said it's just a virus but she feels terrible." "Can I see her?" Tasha led him to Amara's room. The little girl was curled up in bed, her face flushed, her eyes glassy. When she saw Julian, she managed a weak smile. "Hi, Mr. Pierce." "Hi, sweetheart." Julian sat on the edge of her bed. "I heard you're not feeling well." "My throat hurts," Amara whispered. "I brought you some medicine that should help. And your mom is going to take excellent care of you. You'll feel better soon, I promise." "Will you stay?" Amara asked. "I like when you're here." Julian looked at Tasha. "If your mom says it's okay." Tasha nodded, not trusting her voice. Julian stayed. He helped Tasha give Amara her medicine, made her soup when she said she was hungry, and read to her from one of the books he'd given her months ago. His voice was gentle and soothing, and eventually Amara fell asleep. They tiptoed out of the room. Tasha collapsed on the couch, exhausted. Julian sat beside her, not too close but not distant either. "Thank you," Tasha said quietly. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did," Julian said. "Tasha, what's going on? Why have you been avoiding me?" I haven't been avoiding you. Yes, you have. For weeks. Ever since Vanessa showed up. He turned to face her. Did she say something to you? Tasha looked away. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Please talk to me. The exhaustion, the emotion, the fear for her daughter, it all broke through her carefully constructed walls. I saw you with her at the restaurant. I've watched her come to the office acting like she owns you. And I know it's none of my business who you date. But it hurts, Julian. It hurts watching you with her, knowing that I'm just your employee. That I don't belong in your world. Julian stared at her. You think I'm dating Vanessa? Aren't you? No. God, no. Julian ran a hand through his hair. I've been trying to get her to leave me alone for weeks. She shows up at my office uninvited. She manipulates situations so we end up at the same events. And I've been trying to handle it politely because we have mutual friends and business contacts. But I am not, and have never been, interested in getting back together with her. Tasha's heart pounded. But I saw you at dinner. That dinner where you saw us. I spent the entire time telling her that we're done, that we were never right for each other, and that she needs to move on. She didn't take it well. The next day, I had my lawyer send her a formal letter asking her to stop showing up at my office. I didn't know, Tasha whispered. How could you? I didn't tell you because I've been respecting your distance. You pulled away from me and I thought it was because you'd realized I was getting too close. That you didn't want anything personal between us. Julian moved closer. Tasha, I've been miserable these past few weeks. Not because of Vanessa. Because of you. Because I miss talking to you. I miss seeing you smile. I miss everything about you. Tasha looked up at him, tears in her eyes. I thought you didn't want me. I thought I was fooling myself, thinking someone like you could ever care about someone like me. Someone like you? Julian said, his voice intense. Tasha, you're the most incredible woman I've ever met. You're intelligent, kind, strong, beautiful. You've overcome obstacles I can't even imagine. You're an amazing mother. You saved my company's biggest account. You make every day better just by being in it. How could I not care about you? I'm just a cleaning woman who got lucky, Tasha said. You're not just anything, Julian said firmly. He took her hand. You're extraordinary. And I've been falling for you since the day your daughter walked into my office and showed me what real courage looks like. Tasha felt something break open inside her. I've been falling for you too. But I'm scared. Of what? Of this not being real. Of waking up and finding out it was all just kindness, not affection. Of not being enough for you. Julian cupped her face gently. You're more than enough. You're everything. They sat there looking at each other, the truth finally out in the open. Then Amara called out from her room, Mama? Tasha stood quickly. I'll be right back. She went to check on Amara, gave her some water, adjusted her blankets. When she returned, Julian was still sitting on the couch, waiting. He'd stayed. He always stayed. She's sleeping again, Tasha said softly. Julian stood. I should probably go. Let you rest. Or you could stay, Tasha said before she could second-guess herself. Just to help. In case she needs anything. Julian smiled. I'd like that. They spent the rest of the day together, trading off checking on Amara, talking quietly in the living room. Julian ordered more food. They watched an old movie. And slowly, the distance that had been between them melted away, replaced by something warmer, deeper, more real. By evening, Amara's fever had broken. She woke up feeling better, asking for toast. As Tasha made it in the kitchen, Julian sat with Amara and she heard her daughter say, I'm glad you and Mama are friends again. She's been really sad. I've been sad too, Julian admitted. But I think we're going to be okay now. Good, Amara said. Because I want you to stay forever. Tasha stood in the kitchen doorway, her heart full. Julian looked up and caught her eye. The look he gave her was full of promise, of possibility, of a future she'd never dared to imagine. Maybe forever was possible after all. The following Monday everything felt different. Tasha arrived at work with a lightness she hadn't felt in weeks. Julian greeted her with a genuine smile, and for the first time since Vanessa had returned, they fell back into their easy rhythm. But this time there was an undercurrent of something more. The accidental brush of hands when passing files. The lingering looks across the office. The way Julian found excuses to come to her desk, and the way Tasha found reasons to go into his office. Beverly noticed and smiled knowingly but said nothing. The rest of the office sensed the shift too. There was speculation, whispers, but no one could quite pin down what had changed. They just knew that Julian Pierce seemed happier than he'd been in months, and Tasha Brooks had a glow about her that was hard to miss. On Wednesday evening, as Tasha was packing up to leave, Julian appeared at her desk. Do you have plans tomorrow night? Just the usual. Homework with Amara, dinner, bedtime. Would you consider changing those plans? I'd like to take you to dinner. Just the two of us. Tasha's heart skipped. Like a date? Yes, Julian said. Exactly like a date. I know we need to be careful because of work, but I can't keep pretending I don't have feelings for you. I want to do this right. I want to court you properly if you'll let me. Tasha thought about all the reasons this could be complicated. He was her boss. There were power dynamics to consider. People would talk. But when she looked at him, all those concerns faded. She'd already fallen. The only question was whether she'd let herself have what she wanted. Yes, she said. I'd love to. Julian's smile was radiant. Good. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something comfortable. The next evening, Tasha stood in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear. Finally, she chose a simple blue dress that fell to her knees, paired with comfortable flats. She left her hair down, just a bit of makeup, nothing too fancy. When she checked on Amara, her neighbor Mrs. Chen was already there, ready to babysit. You look beautiful, Mama, Amara said, beaming. Thank you, baby. Be good for Mrs. Chen. Is Mr. Pierce taking you on a date? Yes, he is. Are you going to kiss him? Tasha laughed, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. That's none of your business. But if you do, does that mean he'll be my dad? The question caught Tasha off guard. Would you want that? Yes, Amara said seriously. I really like him. And I think he likes us too. He does, Tasha said softly. But let's take things slow, okay? See what happens. When Julian arrived, he looked different. He wore jeans and a casual green sweater instead of his usual suit. It made him seem more approachable, more real. He greeted Amara with a hug and assured her he'd take good care of her mother. In the car, Tasha asked, Where are we going? You'll see, Julian said with a mysterious smile. He drove them to a small neighborhood on the edge of the city, parking in front of a cozy cafe with string lights in the windows. Inside, it was warm and intimate, with maybe 10 tables and a menu written on a chalkboard. I found this place when I first moved to the city, Julian explained as they sat down. Before I had money, before Pierce Industries. I used to come here and dream about the future. I wanted to bring you somewhere that mattered to me. Somewhere real. Tasha looked around at the mismatched chairs, the worn wooden tables, the comfortable simplicity of it all. It's perfect. They ordered food and talked. Not about work but about everything else. Childhoods and dreams and fears and hopes. Julian told her about losing his parents when he was young, about being raised by his grandmother who taught him that kindness was more important than success. Tasha told him about getting pregnant with Amara at 22, about the father who'd left, about the years of struggling alone. I was so scared, Tasha admitted. Every day I was terrified I'd fail her. That I wouldn't be enough. But you were enough, Julian said. Look at Amara. She's confident, kind, smart, happy. That's all you, Tasha. You did that alone. Not entirely alone anymore, Tasha said softly. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. I want to be part of your life. Both of you. Not just as your boss or your friend. I want more than that. So do I, Tasha said. But I need to know this is real. That it's not just gratitude or some rescue fantasy. It's real, Julian said intensely. I'm falling in love with you, Tasha. Maybe I've been falling since the moment I met you. You walked into my life and changed everything. You made me see what really matters. Not money or success or business deals. People. Connection. Love. You and Amara showed me what I was missing. Tears filled Tasha's eyes. I'm falling in love with you too. It scares me how much. It scares me too, Julian admitted. But it's the best kind of scared. The kind that means something real is happening. After dinner they walked through the neighborhood talking and laughing. When Julian drove her home, he walked her to her door. They stood in the hallway, neither wanting the night to end. Can I kiss you? Julian asked quietly. Tasha nodded. Julian cupped her face gently and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Tasha was breathless. Wow, she whispered. Yeah, Julian agreed. Wow. They said goodnight, but as Tasha closed the door, she leaned against it with a smile she couldn't suppress. Inside, Mrs. Chen took one look at her face and laughed. That good, huh? Better, Tasha said. That night, after Mrs. Chen left and Amara was asleep, Tasha sat on her bed, thinking about her life. A year ago, she'd been sick and desperate, barely surviving. Now she had a good job, a safe home and a man who loved her. A man she loved back. She thought about all the ways things could go wrong. The complications, the challenges, the differences between them. But she also thought about the way Julian looked at her. The way he treated Amara. The way he'd stayed by her side through everything. Love was a risk. But maybe, just maybe, it was a risk worth taking. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and the relationship between Tasha and Julian deepened. They went on dates, had quiet dinners at home with Amara, took weekend trips to the beach. Julian was careful to keep things professional at work, but everyone knew. And everyone approved. Even the board of directors, who'd initially raised concerns, came around when they saw how happy Julian was and how much Tasha had improved the company culture. Tasha had been promoted to Director of Employee Relations, overseeing the wellness program she'd helped create. Under her leadership, Pierce Industries had become one of the best places to work in the city, with comprehensive benefits, mental health support, and a culture of respect and dignity for all employees. Vanessa had tried one last time to interfere, spreading rumors and making threats. But Julian's lawyer had handled it swiftly, and she'd finally disappeared back to Europe. Good riddance. Now, on a warm Saturday evening in June, Julian sat in his apartment, nervous. In his pocket was a small velvet box containing a ring he'd spent weeks choosing. It was elegant but simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. Perfect for Tasha. He'd asked Amara's permission first, over ice cream at their favorite shop. I want to marry your mom. But only if that's okay with you. Amara had squealed so loudly that half the shop had turned to look. Really? You really want to be my dad? I really do, Julian had said. If you'll have me. Amara had thrown her arms around him, and they'd spent the next hour planning the proposal. Amara had insisted on helping, and Julian had gladly agreed. She'd picked the restaurant, helped choose the ring, and even written him a pep talk on a piece of paper he now carried in his pocket. Now, at the restaurant, a beautiful place with a view of the city, Julian sat across from Tasha. She wore a stunning red dress that made her skin glow. Her hair was styled in soft curls, and she looked absolutely radiant. Beside them, Amara sat in her own seat, wearing a maroon dress and barely able to contain her excitement. They'd just finished dessert when Julian cleared his throat. Tasha, there's something I want to say. Tasha looked up, curious. Okay. A year ago, a little girl walked into my office with a message that changed my life. She told me her mom was sick, and she asked if she could clean my office instead. In that moment, I saw real courage, real love, real sacrifice. And it woke me up. Tasha's eyes filled with tears as she realized what was happening. You've given me so much, Julian continued. You've shown me what it means to be strong, to fight for what matters, to love unconditionally. You've made me a better man. And Amara, you've shown me what it means to be brave, to care about others, to see the world with kindness and hope. He stood and walked around the table. As he knelt beside Tasha's chair, Amara clapped her hands together, bouncing in her seat. Tasha Brooks, I love you. I love everything about you. Your strength, your compassion, your beautiful smile. I love how you make me laugh, how you challenge me, how you see the best in people. And I love the family we've become together. Will you marry me? He opened the box, revealing the ring. Tasha covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as Amara cheered. Around them, other diners applauded. But Julian and Tasha were lost in their own world, holding each other tight, overwhelmed by joy and love and gratitude. But then, as they stood to leave, there was a commotion at the entrance. Vanessa burst through the door, her face flushed with anger. She'd somehow found out about tonight. In her hand, she held a folder full of papers. Don't do this, Julian, she called out across the restaurant. I have proof that she's just using you for your money. Documents showing she's been planning this from the start. The restaurant went silent. Julian's expression hardened as he walked toward Vanessa, Tasha close behind. What are you talking about? I hired a private investigator, Vanessa said triumphantly. She's been researching your net worth, your properties, everything. She's a gold digger. Tasha felt her stomach drop. But before she could defend herself, Julian's lawyer, Michael Torres, appeared from a nearby table where he'd apparently been waiting. He'd known Vanessa might try something. Miss Richardson, Michael said calmly, stepping between them. I have a cease and desist order here that was filed this morning. If you continue to harass Mr. Pierce and Miss Brooks, you will face legal consequences. Additionally, those documents you're holding are fabricated. We've already proven they're fake. Vanessa's face went white. You can't prove that. Actually, we can. Michael pulled out his own folder. We traced them back to you. You paid someone to create false financial records suggesting Miss Brooks was investigating Mr. Pierce's wealth. It's all documented here. You have two choices: leave now and never contact them again, or face charges for harassment and defamation. Vanessa looked at Julian, then at Tasha, then at the lawyer. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, she turned and left, the folder falling from her hands to the floor. The restaurant erupted in whispers, but Julian ignored everyone. He pulled Tasha into his arms. "I'm so sorry about that." "It's not your fault," Tasha said, shaking. "But how did you know she'd try something?" "I didn't know for sure. But I wanted to be prepared just in case. Michael has been monitoring her activity for weeks." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you okay?" "I am now," Tasha said, looking at the ring on her finger. "Let's go home." They left the restaurant together, Amara between them holding both their hands. In the car, Amara chattered excitedly about the wedding, about being a flower girl, about having a real family. Tasha leaned against Julian's shoulder, feeling overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Tasha wore a simple ivory dress, and Amara walked down the aisle as the flower girl, beaming with pride. When Julian and Tasha exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to love you, to support you, to see you always," Julian said. "I promise to trust you, to build a life with you, to never stop believing in us," Tasha replied. 1 year after the wedding, they stood in their new home, a beautiful house with a yard where Amara could play, watching as their daughter ran around with their new puppy. Tasha was pregnant with their second child, a fact they'd just discovered last week. Julian had his arm around her waist and she leaned into him, feeling complete. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy," Tasha said. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." "It's real," Julian assured her. "And it's forever." Amara ran up to them, the puppy barking at her heels. "Dad, can we get ice cream?" "Dad." She'd started calling him that 6 months ago, and it still made Julian's heart swell every time. "Of course," he said, scooping her up. "But only if Mom wants some too." "Mom always wants ice cream," Tasha laughed. They piled into the car, a family in every sense of the word. As they drove toward town, Amara chattering in the back seat, Julian reached over and took Tasha's hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For walking into my life. For giving me a chance. For loving me." "Thank you for seeing me," Tasha said. "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." They smiled at each other, understanding passing between them without words. Their story had started with desperation and fear, but it had become something beautiful. Something built on kindness, hope, and love. And that, Tasha thought as they pulled into the parking lot, was the best kind of story there was.